Welcome to The Exchange, the program that explores everyday issues that affect us. Throughout the program, we'll be exchanging many ideas with leaders in their respective fields. I'm Rob Buckingham, and my co-host on The Exchange is my wife, Christy.
It's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to today's show.
Absolutely.
We'll be discussing a tricky topic of whether there should be privacy in relationships. Do we have to be open books, or is there a place for privacy within a relationship?
To discuss this topic, we're delighted to be joined by Sabina Reid, a psychologist and social commentator. Welcome, Sabina.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Christy.
Great to have you with us. We're also excited to be joined by Nick Valentine, who is a branch manager for LifeWorks, which is a not-for-profit organisation that aims to promote healthy relationships within the community. Welcome to the show, Nick. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Before we start today's topic, let's take a look at this video.
We all have secrets. It's great if we can be an open book, but what if there are things we don't want our partner to know? Does our partner need to know everything about us? Or should there be some privacy in our relationships?
It's going to be a great topic today, and I think it'll be very helpful, and maybe we can have a little bit of fun with it as well. Sabina, let's start with you. Is there a place for privacy in relationships?
I absolutely think there is, Rob, but what I would like to differentiate is between secrecy and privacy.
Right, good point.
And I think they are two different things, and often secrecy brings with it some level of deception, whereas privacy is about holding something to yourself that's just for you.
Okay.
So does that mean that hiding the chocolate is deceptive? And you say, no, I don't know there's any chocolate in the house.
Let's just get this right, though. I'm the one that has to hide the chocolate, OK?
Oh, yes.
So
yes,
right
because
up
I'm
front.
trying to hide something. Yeah, there's a bit of deception there, I get it.
There is some deception, isn't there? Even though whenever we have a chocolate stash, our partner knows where it is.
What about you, Nick? What do you think?
Look, I think it's such a broad question, and I think every couple varies. I think I think your point's spot on, Sabina, in terms of privacy and secrecy. You know, one of the things I consider too, though, is if there is privacy, you know, what are the reasons for that? If it's about fear of ramifications, then it could point to bigger issues such as power and control or abuse. But look, I think it's also something that needs to be set up very early in the relationship, so having a very transparent discussion in the so-called honeymoon period and, you know, working out, I guess, what you're comfortable with, what you want to share, what you don't want to share, and also how the other person feels about that.
Why do you think people don't like the transparency? Is it simply because they just want to have something private, or is it because they're trying to control?
One of the ways I often describe human behaviour is that we have what I call our real self, which is our most sort of authentic self, that is the who we are without thinking, the automatic self, if you like. And then we have the reflecting self, and that's the way we want to be perceived by others, and we want to perceive ourselves. And when there's some kind of disconnect between the real self and the reflecting self, we feel a sense of discomfort and sometimes want to hide. So, for instance, with privacy and secrecy as an issue, if you want to see yourself as a patient, tolerant, loving partner, but then you have, you know, screamed or stolen the money or done something, it doesn't match with the you that you want to be, and so it creates an internal tension in the self.
And how do you relieve that?
By screaming.
Apart from screaming.
Oh, right.
Do you just fess up? Do you just say, I've just made a mistake, I shouldn't have done that?
And isn't it interesting that sharing and disclosing private and sometimes secret information often brings two people closer together?
Yes.
So like Nick said, what's the reason why we, you know, look for each individual and each couple to look at what's the reason, what's our motivation for withholding information? Are we fearful of the way our partner will receive it? Are we fearful of being rejected, of being judged? And often those fears get bigger and bigger when we withhold, and when we share, we find that it's not as bad as we thought.
What if it is as bad as you thought?
Oh, that's a good point.
What if the disclosing of something that was private or secret actually...
Maybe like an affair or something like that?
Or whatever,
or
just turns around and is not great. What would you do?
Look, I think it's, you know, again, every couple's different, and I mean, if something like that is going to cause such a reaction, then it probably needed to be raised, and it probably points to a significant flaw in the relationship that I think inevitably probably would come up anyway. You know, just catching on the end of what Sabina said, I think a healthy, I call it a sense of self, which I think is similar to what you're saying, It's important in relationships that, of course, you know, the identity as a couple is important, but I think also having your own sense of self is important too. So, you know, it really is a balance, and I think you save a lot of headaches later if you can actually have the conversations early and work out what the agreements are and almost what the parameters are in terms of what you will and won't share.
It's easier said than done though, isn't it? Because when you're in the honeymoon period, you don't want to get out the rule book. You just want to laugh and talk and have sex.
And what about if you genuinely think that the thing that you're covering has actually no consequence to the other person? Like, and you don't want to be drilled. You were out with so-and-so, your girlfriend, chatting for 5 hours, and what do you say? Oh, we just talked about a holiday we'd like to go on.
For 5
hours? Well, you just don't actually want to go into the same conversation with your partner necessarily. And it's not that you're trying to cover anything, it's just like...
So that sounds like more privacy than secrecy. In fact, it sounds like boring privacy. And absolutely, in any couple, there's part of us that our partner doesn't need to know. It borderline is boring.
It is. I don't want to know about the 5-hour conversation.
You don't need to know.
Sometimes you do ask.
Yeah, but I want it in 5 seconds, not 5 hours.
And then I give you the 5-second version, and then he goes, for 5 hours?
Yeah,
is there anything else you talked about?
Yeah, but after 20 years of marriage, I'm just used to that, you know.
In fact, I think the other side of that too is if you're feeling pressured to give that much disclosure, you can actually feel encroached upon and you know, smothered, so to speak, and you know, that's important to watch in a relationship too.
Yeah, so you're talking about two people being individuals within the relationship. The relationship is, as you say, a unit unto itself, but so are the two individuals in the relationship.
That's right.
And I think that space between people in a relationship is really important to continuing a long-term healthy relationship.
Do most couples, in your experience, have been keep something to themselves?
They do, but that's why I wanted to differentiate between secrecy and privacy. I think we all keep things to ourselves. I'll give a good example, I think, that maybe helps shed light on this topic, and that is bathroom behaviour, toilet behaviour.
Oh yes, please keep that private, even secret.
Okay.
Secret.
Now, I'm not going to go into my personal, you'll be glad to hear, Chris.
I'm very glad to hear.
But
Nick's wondering what's coming.
But we are going to go into yours, Nick.
Yeah. Close the door.
But that's a good example of privacy, but there's nothing secret there, is there?
I hope not.
I mean, it's pretty clear what's going on behind the door most of the time, but it's a sense of keeping that part
Dignity.
of yourself private.
Yes.
And I just like that as an example to highlight, you know, that doesn't take away from the connection in a relationship. In fact, it probably enhances it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's and all.
Yeah.
Totally. Nick, would you add anything to that?
Not really. I think you're spot on. You know, I think it's healthy to keep a sense of self, but also it's important to have things like that private. You know, again, I think it depends on what you're comfortable with and what the other person comfortable with. And I mean, if you compare things like a long distance relationship, they're probably not going to have, you know, I guess they're going to have more privacy than probably couples that live together, just by nature of the fact that, you know, they live together. So, yeah, I think it varies with each couple, but I do think it's a healthy thing.
And with it varying with each couple, it's important, as you say, for each individual, they're not going to think the same on this topic. So for each individual to share what they think constitutes privacy and what's appropriate, then they're not going to be in full agreement on this. But how do you know until you've had that conversation?
Yeah, it's true.
What about the online world? Internet, social media, privacy, secrecy?
Big.
Must be a massive area.
It's a big area, and one of the things I see a lot is when in a couple, one over-discloses, if you like, online about the other one or about the relationship. And not
yes,
not
I had that the other day. My husband put up a picture of me 20-odd years ago, and that was bad enough. I looked like something out of Dallas. And then he has his, you know, his mo.
I put it up from November, right?
I was part of that picture.
Yes, and you hadn't been consulted.
So I said, you are in so much trouble.
So I've seen that a lot, and in more serious examples than the Dallas, the hairdo problems.
Of course.
And so that actually looks at the privacy of your partner in the relationship, not just your own sense of privacy and self, but what about your partner's, you know, beliefs around privacy, and how do we honour those?
Yeah.
And do you think that even goes with friends? I mean, we've been on holidays with people and we've gone, please don't put this on Facebook. We just need this sacred spot with our family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, even the connections that are made on things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat's a good one. It's literally photos that last, 2 or 3 seconds on a phone that, you know, can be private, and it causes huge problems in a relationship.
I'd like to come back and explore a little bit more on that, because that's a massive area. We need to take a break, but we'll be back soon with more discussion on The Exchange. Welcome back to The Exchange. We're having a lively discussion with Sabina Reid and Nick Valentine about privacy and if there's a place for it in relationships. Nick, before the break we were talking about online privacy versus secrecy. I've heard a number of instances over the last few months, years, about a guy, for example, rekindling an old flame on Facebook and then it going too far, and we see a lot of this sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, look, yes, more broadly, I mean, that's quite an isolated incident. That's probably pretty rare in itself. But as an example, I had a couple who came to counselling because essentially her husband's ex-partner had contacted him on Facebook, still actually had feelings for him and was making that quite known. Now, he was quite loyal in the relationship, felt like his boundaries were very clear, but of course his wife became really angry and suspicious and upset and, you know, questioned him, and it took a lot of de-escalating and a lot of, you know, communication and a lot of sessions really to talk through the impact of that and you know, what options he had to close down the friendship on Facebook, for example. Yeah,
so he actually obviously had to accept the friendship request in the first place. So would that not, for you, would that not be some warning bells, especially?
Look, I think for me, it's, and in this particular case, I think she was still a friend on Facebook from their relationship. So, you know, it's that whole discussion about do you delete them, do you not? You know, his argument was they're still mutual friends. He wants to keep things amicable, so therefore he felt like they needed to be friends on Facebook. But of course, this woman obviously took things too far.
Can you give us an idea of some of the other things that people actually keep secret or private?
Look, affairs is probably the biggest one. That I know that of a study that showed 37% of partners have checked each other's phones, online accounts, emails, social media, and that's quite a high number. Checked it on the sly, I mean, checked it without their partner knowing.
And never tell their partner.
What about for people that have, say, like a secret email address or another mobile phone? I've heard about that happening.
Okay, so again, I think then we need to ask, what is the motivation of doing that? And to me, just even hearing you say that, it falls under the umbrella of deception. Which is different to privacy. Because if you need to have a second phone because you don't want your partner to know that you're receiving some calls, you're withholding something because you know it doesn't sit right with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we've got to watch that whole world, haven't we? Because it's so easy to access privately.
Yeah, and it's not going away, is it? I mean, that is pervasive in all our lives, our online.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. I think, you know, the issue of family violence in our society is huge, and it's a gendered phenomenon, meaning that men are usually the perpetrators of family violence, and not just physical. And you know, I think another issue is this underlying entitlement that some men have, that, you know, they deserve to know every move that their partner's making, yet their partner can't know anything, and they get a leave pass to go out and be with their friends and don't have to contact their partners. So that's another thing. I think imbalance is a problem as well. Sure,
comes back to good communication. Well, you've heard from our experts. Let's take a look at what the people have to say.
What's off limits when it comes to sharing information with your partner? Should you be 100% transparent, or is there room for privacy? What sort of information would you not share with a partner?
Oh, there isn't much. Maybe some past secrets from way back.
So before you were with that person?
Before, way before. If it didn't have any bearing on that relationship.
With the partner I've got at the moment, probably I'll pretty much share everything.
I'm pretty close to my partner, so I think I could share everything with him, really.
Maybe, I suppose, a very young past experience that I might have had with another partner.
Gee, I don't know. Maybe it's I've never been in a really serious relationship, so you'd like to think you share most things.
How much money I've saved or that type of thing, I suppose. Yeah.
Probably secrets that I've kept for a long time that only I know.
If I was unfaithful, I probably wouldn't share that because that's just not needed.
Actually, I have a really open relationship with my partner, so pretty much all is all is available.
Do you see any room for privacy within a relationship while you're in it?
There is a little bit of room as long as it's not a secret, something that affects the relationship now.
I think yes. Look, I think it's great to be honest, absolutely, with your partner. And I think sometimes keeping something to yourself that you feel that it is a private thing that is only between you and something in your past or in the present that really doesn't affect your partner or contribute to the relationship to harm it. Yes, maybe yes.
I think it just comes down to trust. Like, you know, as long as it's not any like breaking any moral laws or rules or things like that, and it's living in values within the relationship, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think they need to know everything. I think I like to have my own life as well as a committed relationship. So I see a lot of friends and we have our separate time as well, which is important.
I think it's important for everyone to be fully content with themselves in order to bring in something important to a relationship and bring themselves to a relationship. And I think part of that contentness is about retaining a sense of privacy. So, yes.
Oh, some very interesting opinions there. Joining us now is Street Talk reporter Sandra Cavallo. Welcome, Sandra.
Hi, how you going?
Good.
That was great. I loved the way that they brought out some of the things we've already mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But what did you find particularly good out there?
Well, I found it quite interesting that the majority of people were saying that, you know, no, I like to be an open book. But then I thought about it, like, I do think that people do keep certain things to themselves. But then the major things, what you've talked about in terms of deception, they would keep that to themselves, and yet I wonder how they bear that themselves personally. Like, if you're holding a major secret, how
you live with it.
How do you live with it, and how does it affect you in the way you relate in that relationship?
And what did you guys think about the guy who said, I would keep all financial details?
Yeah, any money I'd saved.
Well, it's pretty full on. I think the two things that stood out for me, well, first of all, that can actually be financial abuse. If you're, you know, containing money and not being open with your partner about what you have, then that can actually be financial abuse. But the other two things that stood out to me was, one, the guy who said, well, with the partner I have now, I share everything. And I think that highlights our point before about, you know, every couple's different and it depends on who you're with. The other thing that stood out to me too was, you know, the T word, the trust. And it's probably something we haven't said. It, you know, again, for me, communication's important. If you can put spot fires out now, it probably saves a bushfire later, that whole thing. You know, what you said before, you can try and have agreements, I guess, about what you will and won't share, but equally, you know, sometimes it's just ad hoc and as you go, and it's really just about being open and you know, having that capacity to share your insecurities and also take on board your partners.
What stood out to you, Sabina?
One of the people said something to the effect of, I don't need to share something with my partner if it's from my past and it doesn't affect my current relationship.
Past relationships.
Or even just past experiences. And you know, an alarm bell goes off for me a little bit then, because I think we are so much a part of who we are now because of our history, because of our family of origin, because of our past relationships, because of, you know, everything has moulded us as to who we
Whereas
are
that
now.
person is probably seeing it as a closed chapter. That chapter's closed, I'm moved on, I'm going into this new
and
new
I'm not
area.
sure actually we fully close chapters like that. We carry all these experiences, even in a little way, with us.
But do we want to know all the gory details of the last relationship? Can we handle that?
I don't think we need to know all the gory details, but I think it's naive to think that we don't carry some of that with us into our next relationship.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the unfaithfulness thing? One of the people said that, you know, well, if I'd been unfaithful, I wouldn't share it because it's not needed to be shared. What?
I wonder what their partner would say about that.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is there's a lot of internal dialogue that needs to happen here. You know, being honest with yourself about why you are or aren't sharing something. And you know, I think sometimes people do kid themselves and that can lead to problems later because, God forbid, if things do get put on the table, then automatically defensive. Well, I didn't think you needed to know. And then obviously tension builds.
And then trust has been broken right there because it hasn't been shared.
The whole thing could implode. Thanks for popping in.
Thank you.
Sandra, it's great. Time to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to The Exchange with our guests, psychologist Sabina Reid and LifeWorks branch manager Nick Valentine. They've been sharing their thoughts on whether privacy can exist in relationships.
Yeah, it's been really good.
It has. It's been great.
Guys, tell us, what do we do if we ourselves have been keeping something from our partner, or we know that our partner has been keeping something deceptively from us? Where should we go from there? What do we do to get some help?
Good question. And I think a lot of people who come to relationship counselling feel stuck. And you know, one of the things we focus on is what John Gottman says about open communication, but particularly soft startup. So first of all, if you notice there are warning signs that might give you that gut feeling that something's wrong.
Yeah, what sort of warning signs would you look for?
Withdrawal, you know, just less jovial than they usually are. There might be certain topics of conversation or conversation about certain people that might lead them to feel, you know, that might lead to withdrawal or just some odd behaviours. And, you know, again, being open in communication, but starting that rather than in the case, for example, where, you know, I guess you're not, or where you notice that you think your partner might be keeping something from you, it's raising it in a way that's not accusing. You know, you're doing this, what's your problem? You're the issue, but rather, look, this is something I've noticed, I want to talk it through, it might be my issue. You know, really making sure that soft startup.
And along with that too is talking about observable behaviours, as opposed to things that you've just got in your head that, you know, they've run off and got married to someone else, you know, last week. And to actually look at observable behaviours so that you're able to say to your partner, what I have noticed is, and you can give a list that it's less threatening and it's more factual.
So things like the withdrawal and all of that kind of stuff.
You seem more withdrawn, or
I've
you're
noticed
on your phone a lot,
statement.
or I noticed you're coming home late a lot, or, you know.
What if there's constant denial, though? I'm thinking of one guy in particular, and this has ended in a marriage breakup, but he constantly denied. His wife would confront him on different things. He constantly denied it and actually turned it back on her and said, this is your problem, you're paranoid, and it actually ended up affecting her majorly. And then she eventually discovered a second mobile phone and that he was having an affair with a staff member. So what do you do when there's a denial?
If she had really, well, she had tuned into her gut, hadn't she? And she knew. So when there's denial, I think you almost need to go back to your own compass, because you're not getting a clear compass from your partner. Go back to what's really happening for you, what feels like, and follow through on that. So if that means, you know, making a decision to enter counselling, to seeking help, ultimately it might mean the end of the relationship.
But still not being accusatory in case you've actually made it up. I mean, just because somebody starts to dress better or do exercise doesn't automatically mean that they're heading out for an affair. They may have had someone in their office have an illness diagnosed or whatever. But things will eventually come to the surface, won't they, if there is a problem?
I think if you stick with the observed behaviours and also about how it's affecting you, so instead of pointing the finger and blame on the other person, to talk about what it feels like for you. It makes me feel insecure, it makes me feel uncertain, it makes me feel unloved. It's easier for a partner to respond to that than, you know, you doing this and you're doing that, because the minute anyone tells us we're doing something, you know, our walls go up and resolution's difficult to come by.
That's great. You guys have both added wonderful value to our program today. Nick and Sabina, thank you so much for being with us on The Exchange. And thank you for watching. Please go to our website for a fact sheet, as well as more information about this show, The Exchange. We look forward to seeing you next time.
See you soon.